There is a peculiar habit of the human heart that insists on measuring God by the clock on the wall. We peer at our watches, glance at the calendar, count the days that have slipped through our fingers, and quietly conclude that if nothing has happened yet, nothing ever will. Yet this habit, though common, is deeply mistaken. For God is not slow in the way we are slow, nor hurried in the way we rush. He is neither late nor early, but exact. And what often feels to us like a long season of silence is, in truth, the careful gathering of strength before a sudden and decisive act. Most of our worry springs from imagining that tomorrow must be built using only the materials we can already see today. We assume that because the cupboard looks empty now, it must remain empty. Because the door has stayed closed for so long, it must be locked forever. But worry is not a sign of wisdom. It is usually a sign that we have forgotten who is in charge. When we worry, we are not merely expressing concern about circumstances. We are quietly suggesting that God may have overlooked something important. And this, if we are honest, is a far greater problem than the circumstances themselves. Consider how often God's work in the world has arrived without warning. Not gradually announced with trumpets and banners, but quietly prepared in hidden places, then revealed all at once. The sea did not slowly open for Israel, it parted in a moment. The walls of Jericho did not politely crumble over several weeks, they fell suddenly. The stone was not half rolled away from the tomb, it was found already moved. God seems to delight in these moments when human expectation is overturned, when the situation shifts so quickly that no one can claim credit except Him. We worry because we imagine that God works like a committee, debating endlessly, filing paperwork, waiting for approval. But God works more like an author, writing a story whose most important chapters are often saved for later. The reader, stuck halfway through the book, may feel frustrated, even tempted to stop reading altogether. Yet the author knows precisely when the turning point must arrive. If it came earlier, the story would be thin. If it came later, the lesson would be lost. Timing, in God's hands, is not cruelty, it is craftsmanship. There is also this uncomfortable truth. Worry gives us the illusion of control. By worrying, we feel as though we are doing something about the problem, when in reality we are only exhausting ourselves. Worry does not prepare us for tomorrow, it robs us of today. It drains the strength we will need when the breakthrough finally comes. God does not ask us to stop caring, but He does ask us to stop pretending that our anxiety can improve His plans. Think of how suddenly clarity can arrive after long confusion. For weeks, months, sometimes years, everything feels tangled. Questions pile upon questions. Prayers seem to echo back unanswered. And then, almost without warning, one event, one conversation, one unexpected opportunity rearranges everything. Looking back, we realize that the waiting was not empty time at all. It was the soil being turned, the roots growing deeper, the structure forming beneath the surface where no one could see it. God's suddenness is rarely random. What feels abrupt to us has often been carefully prepared in secret. We see the fruit appear and call it a miracle, forgetting the long, unseen process that made it possible. This is why faith is required, not because God is unreliable, but because His methods are often invisible until the very moment they are revealed. Faith is learning to trust the unseen preparation while standing in the visible delay. There is a particular danger in prolonged waiting. We begin to adjust our expectations downward. We stop hoping for change and settle for survival. We tell ourselves that perhaps this is all life will ever be. But resignation is not the same as faith. Faith does not deny the difficulty of the present. It refuses to deny the power of God over it. When God acts suddenly, He often does so to shatter this quiet resignation and remind us that we were never meant to live in permanent discouragement. You see, God's sudden intervention is not merely about changing circumstances, it is about restoring perspective. It teaches us that the story was never confined to what we could predict. It humbles our calculations and reawakens our wonder. When God does it suddenly, we are forced to admit that our worry contributed nothing to the outcome. The breakthrough would have come whether we panicked or prayed, but only prayer leaves us whole enough to receive it with gratitude. There is also mercy in the delay itself. If God answered every prayer immediately, we might come to treat him like a vending machine rather than a living Lord. The waiting teaches us to seek him, not just his gifts. It exposes the areas where our trust is shallow and invites it to grow deeper. And then, when the answer comes suddenly, it does not merely solve a problem, it strengthens a relationship. It is worth noticing how often Jesus responded to need in ways that confounded expectation. Sometimes he healed instantly, other times he waited, sometimes he spoke a word, other times he used mud and water. The pattern seems inconsistent until we realize that the goal was never to follow a formula, but to reveal a person. God is not training us to predict his methods. He is training us to trust his character. Worry, at its core, is a form of self-centered imagination. It imagines a future without God in it and then reacts accordingly. Faith imagines the same future but insists on including God, even when his role is not yet clear. This is why faith can rest while circumstances remain unsettled. It knows that sudden change is always possible when God is involved, because he is not limited by the momentum of events. You may feel today that everything has been decided already, that the door has been closed, the verdict delivered, the opportunity missed. But history, both sacred and ordinary, is filled with moments when what appeared final was suddenly reversed. The promotion came when the resume had been forgotten. The reconciliation happened after years of silence. The healing arrived when hope was nearly gone. These moments do not happen because people worried harder, but because God moved at the precise moment his purpose required. Stopping worry, then, is not an act of denial, it is an act of surrender. It is placing the future back into the hands that formed it in the first place. It is acknowledging that while you are responsible for obedience, effort, and faithfulness, you are not responsible for outcomes. That burden was never yours to carry, and it is no wonder it has felt so heavy. When God does something suddenly, it often feels as though time itself has been redeemed. What took years to endure is resolved in a moment. What seemed permanently broken is restored with astonishing speed. This does not mean the pain was meaningless, it means the pain was not victorious. God does not waste suffering, but neither does he require it to last forever. Perhaps the greatest surprise is not that God acts suddenly, but that he has been present all along. In hindsight, we see signs of his guidance scattered throughout the waiting period, small mercies, quiet protections, unexpected encouragements that kept us going. The sudden breakthrough, then, is not the start of God's involvement, but the unveiling of it. So if you find yourself worrying today, it may help to remember that worry assumes continuity, while faith expects interruption. Worry believes that tomorrow must look like today. Faith believes that God can redraw the map overnight, and often he does exactly that, not because we have earned it, but because love delights in surprise. You are not asked to manufacture peace by sheer willpower. You are invited to receive it by trust. Peace is not found in predicting every possible outcome, but in knowing the one who holds them all. When that knowledge settles in the heart, worry loses its authority, and waiting becomes bearable, even hopeful. There is, hidden within every delay, the possibility of sudden joy, and there is, hidden within every season of worry, an invitation to rest. God is not asking you to understand how he will do it. He is asking you to believe that he can, and that when he does, it will be neither too late nor too small, but fitting in a way that only he could design. And as you continue to walk forward, even with unanswered questions and unfulfilled hopes, you may need a look back and realize that the very moment you thought nothing was happening was the moment everything was quietly being arranged, ready to be revealed all at once, in a way that would leave no room for doubt, no room for boasting, and no room for fear. Because the suddenness itself would testify that what has now unfolded could never have been produced by human effort alone, but only by a God who waits until the exact second when the heart is ready, the lesson complete, and the story prepared to turn in a way that transforms not only the situation, but the soul that has been shaped through the waiting. And as that realization begins to dawn, you start to see that even now, Even before the change appears, something within you has already shifted, because the grip of worry has loosened. The constant strain has begun to ease, and there is a quiet sense, not loud or dramatic, but steady and persistent, that what you feared might never change is closer to changing than you think, closer than it has ever been, because God has a habit of acting just when the tension is greatest, just when the night feels longest, just when the human heart has reached the end of its own resources. And that is often the point where his work moves from the hidden to the visible, from preparation to manifestation, from waiting to suddenly. And you may not yet see the full picture, but even now the pieces are moving, the circumstances aligning, the right moments approaching, and though it feels unfinished, unresolved and suspended, it is in fact leaning toward an outcome that will make sense of the delay, and you will one day say, perhaps with quiet amazement rather than loud triumph, that the waiting was real, the worry was understandable, but the faith was justified, because what God did next came not gradually, not by small predictable steps, but in a way that felt like a single decisive stroke, changing everything at once. And even as you are still standing in the middle of the story, still breathing in uncertainty, still learning how to let go, there is reason to believe that the same God who has carried you this far has not finished writing, and what remains to be revealed is nearer now than it has ever been, nearer than yesterday, nearer than your fear suggests, because suddenly does not announce itself in advance. It simply arrives, and when it does, it often begins exactly where you are now, in this very moment of choosing to stop worrying and to trust that what feels delayed is, in truth, approaching its appointed time. And as that time draws closer, the unseen work continues quietly, steadily, faithfully, even while you wait, even while you wonder, even while the answer seems just out of reach, because the hand that is guiding the process has never let go, and it will not begin to let go now. Not when the turning point is already forming, not when the next movement of the story is preparing to unfold, not when the sudden you have been longing for is nearer than your tired heart can yet perceive. And so you remain here, still listening, still hoping, still learning to trust, as the moment approaches when what has been hidden will be revealed, and what has been delayed will finally move, and what has been promised will begin to take shape in a way that continues to unfold before your eyes, not as a single isolated miracle that stands alone and then fades, but as the opening of a wider horizon that shows you how carefully every step has been guided. For when God acts suddenly, he rarely stops at one change. One answered prayer often loosens another, and another still, like a chain of doors opening where only one seemed visible before. This is why the heart that has learned to stop worrying begins to recognize opportunity where it once saw only delay. The posture of trust sharpens vision. It allows you to notice the quiet invitations, the gentle nudges, the moments that once would have been dismissed as coincidence but now appear as coordination. It is strange how worry narrows the soul. It shrinks our sense of possibility until the future feels cramped and airless. Faith, on the other hand, expands the inner space. It does not deny hardship, but it refuses to let hardship define the limits of what God can do. When you stop worrying, you are not pretending that pain is small, you are declaring that God is larger. This shift may seem subtle, but it changes everything. It alters how you wait, how you pray, how you interpret. Silence. Silence, under the lens of worry, feels like abandonment. Under the lens of faith, it becomes anticipation. There is a peculiar freedom that comes when you accept that you cannot force God's timing. Much of our anxiety comes from trying to hurry what can only be received. We push, strain, and strategize, exhausting ourselves in the process, only to discover later that the decisive moment could not have been manufactured. It had to be given. And when it was given, it arrived with a completeness that effort alone could never produce. God's sudden work often carries with it a sense of rightness, as though the pieces have fallen into place not by accident, but by design. You may wonder why God allows the waiting to stretch so long that hope itself begins to ache. One reason may be that shallow hope is easily satisfied, while deep hope requires endurance. A heart that has waited learns to recognize the true value of what arrives. It does not treat the blessing lightly. It does not assume it is owed. Instead, it receives it with reverence, knowing how close it once came to despair. In this way, the delay prepares not only the situation but the soul. It is also worth remembering that God's suddenness often catches us mid-stride, still walking forward in obedience rather than sitting still in bitterness. Many breakthroughs meet people in motion. They arrive while the person is still doing the last thing God asked them to do, even when it seemed pointless or unrewarded. Worry tempts us to stop moving, to withdraw until certainty returns. Faith keeps us walking, trusting that clarity will meet us along the path. The heart that learns to stop worrying begins to understand that uncertainty is not the enemy of faith, despair is. Uncertainty simply means the story is still being written. It leaves room for surprise, room for grace, room for sudden transformation. Despair, on the other hand, declares the story finished prematurely. God specializes in writing past the point where humans would have stopped. There is something deeply humbling about realizing how often we misjudge the situation. We think we know which door must open, which outcome would be best, which answer would finally bring relief. Then God intervenes suddenly, and it is neither the door we expected nor the path we planned, yet it proves to be wiser, kinder, and more sustaining than anything we imagined. This is why trust is not passive resignation, it is active openness to being corrected by a greater wisdom. When worry loosens its grip, gratitude begins to grow even before the breakthrough arrives. You start to notice the small mercies that have carried you through the waiting, the strength to endure another day, the unexpected encouragement, the quiet provision that met you just in time. These are not distractions from the main answer, they are part of the same care. God does not withhold himself while you wait for his action. He walks with you through the delay, shaping you for what is coming. Sudden change can be unsettling as well as joyful. It requires adjustment. It calls for courage to step into the new reality God has opened. This is another reason the waiting matters. It stretches your capacity so that when the door finally opens, you are not overwhelmed by what lies beyond it. You have learned patience, humility, and dependence, qualities that will sustain you when circumstances shift quickly. Stopping worry does not mean you will never feel fear again. It means fear no longer has the final word. It may speak, but it does not decide. Each time you choose trust over anxiety, you reinforce a habit of the heart that makes room for peace. Peace is not the absence of trouble, it is the presence of confidence in the midst of it. And this confidence grows quietly, often unnoticed, until one day you realize that the situation has changed, or perhaps more surprisingly, that you have. There is a mystery in how God weaves together human freedom and divine action. You are called to act faithfully, to make wise choices, to love, to forgive, to persevere. Yet the outcomes remain in God's hands. When he acts suddenly, it reminds us that the world is not closed, not fixed, not trapped in a single trajectory. Grace can enter at any moment and redirect the course of events. Many people look back on their lives and identify a moment when everything changed. At the time, it felt abrupt, even shocking, but with distance they see how that moment was connected to countless small acts of obedience and trust that preceded it. Nothing was wasted, nothing was random. Even the worry, though unnecessary, became a contrast that made peace sweeter when it finally came. You may be tempted to think that your situation is the exception, that your waiting is too long, your problem too complex, your hope too fragile. But this thought itself is a form of worry disguised as realism. God is not intimidated by complexity or constrained by duration. Time, which presses so heavily on us, is a tool in his hands, not a barrier. As you learn to stop worrying, you may notice a new kind of strength emerging. It is not the loud confidence that boasts about the future, but the quiet resilience that trusts God, regardless of how the future unfolds. This strength allows you to remain kind when answers are slow, generous when resources feel tight, faithful when recognition is absent. And it is often this strength that positions you for the sudden change you cannot yet see. There is an irony here. The more desperately we cling to a specific outcome, the harder it becomes to receive what God actually gives. Worry tightens the grip. Faith opens the hands. God's sudden gifts often require open hands, because they are not always what we expected, though they are always what we need. Even now, as you listen and reflect, there may be a quiet stirring within you, a sense that something is shifting, not outwardly yet, but inwardly. This is not imagination. Inner shifts often precede outer change. When the heart realigns with trust, it becomes ready to recognize and respond to God's movement when it comes. God's suddenness does not mean chaos, it means clarity. When the moment arrives, confusion gives way to understanding with surprising speed. What once felt tangled becomes simple. What once felt impossible becomes obvious. And you may find yourself stepping into a new chapter with a calm you did not expect, because the waiting has already taught you how to lean on God rather than on circumstances. If you are tempted to return to worry tomorrow, remember that worry has never once predicted God's next move. It has never foreseen the grace that interrupts the pattern, the mercy that rewrites the ending. Faith, though it cannot predict either, remains open to them. It leaves space for God to act in ways that surprise and restore. And so you continue, not rushing ahead, not sinking back, but walking steadily forward, carrying your questions without letting them crush your hope, carrying your desires without letting them harden into demands. You live in the tension between promise and fulfillment, learning that this tension itself can be a place of growth rather than torment. The story is still moving. The unseen work continues. The alignment of events, hearts, and moments progresses quietly, beyond your awareness, beyond your calculations. What feels static is not stagnant. What feels delayed is not denied. And though you may not know when the shift will come, you can know this. When it does, it will reveal that the waiting was not empty, the trust was not foolish, and the decision to stop worrying was not weakness but wisdom, because it allowed you to remain present, receptive, and ready as the moment draws nearer, as the next movement of the story prepares to emerge, as what has been held back gathers momentum, as what has been promised leans toward fulfillment, and you remain here, attentive and open, still listening for the quiet signs, still choosing trust over fear, still walking forward in hope, as the sudden you have not yet seen continues to approach, shaped by a wisdom greater than your own, guided by a love that has never been absent, and carried forward toward a moment that has been forming all along, even now, even here, even as the waiting continues and the story goes on, stretching beyond what you can currently imagine, yet remaining anchored in the same steady faith that has brought you this far. For there is something quietly transformative about realizing that God is not hurried by your urgency, nor discouraged by your fatigue. He is not pacing anxiously outside the moment you are in. He is fully present within it, using even the slow hours and repetitive days to shape a depth within you that sudden joy alone could never produce. This is why the waiting, though uncomfortable, is not empty. It is formative. It teaches you how to hold hope without clutching it, how to desire without despairing, how to trust without demanding proof. When you stop worrying, you begin to notice how much of life is sustained by grace you did not earn or orchestrate. Your breath continues. Strength arrives for tasks you thought you could not complete. Wisdom appears at moments when you expected only confusion. These small continuities are not insignificant. They are reminders that God's faithfulness is already active, even before the dramatic change you are longing for appears. The sudden breakthrough, when it comes, will not be a contradiction of this faithfulness, but an extension of it. It is often in hindsight that we see how carefully God protected us during the waiting. Opportunities that seemed promising but quietly fell apart may have spared us greater harm. Delays that felt cruel may have prevented premature decisions. At the time, worry interprets these moments as setbacks. Faith later recognizes them as mercy. God's sudden actions are often preceded by subtle safeguards, invisible at first, but unmistakable once the larger picture comes into view. There is also this to consider: God's timing is rarely centered on one life alone. He works with a vast interconnectedness that includes other people, other decisions, other moments of readiness. What feels like your personal delay may be the alignment of many lives converging toward a moment that will bless more than just you. When God does it suddenly, the impact often ripples outward, touching others in ways you could not have planned. Worry isolates. It turns your attention inward, looping endlessly around your own fears. Trust reconnects. It reminds you that you are part of a larger story, one that is not solely dependent on your understanding or control. This perspective does not minimize your pain, but it places it within a framework of meaning that can sustain you when answers are slow. As you continue to wait, you may find that your prayers change. They become less about persuading God to act and more about aligning yourself with what He is already doing. This shift is subtle but powerful. It replaces frantic pleading with quiet confidence. It allows you to say, even without knowing how or when, that you trust the outcome because you trust the one who holds it. God's suddenness often feels like interruption because it disrupts the narrative you had been telling yourself. You had adjusted to disappointment, rehearsed explanations, built defenses around your expectations. Then God steps in and rewrites the script. This can be disorienting at first. Joy itself can feel unfamiliar after long seasons of restraint. But this too is part of the healing. God not only restores circumstances, He retrains the heart to receive good again. Stopping worry does not mean you stop caring deeply. It means you stop carrying what was never meant to be yours alone. You continue to act responsibly, to make wise choices, to show up faithfully, but you release the illusion that everything depends on you. This release is not laziness, it is trust. And trust creates space for peace, space for clarity, space for God to move in ways that anxiety would have crowded out. You may notice that as worry diminishes, patience grows, not as passive endurance, but as active expectation. Patience in this sense is not waiting with clenched teeth, but waiting with open eyes. It watches for God's movement without insisting on a timetable. It remains alert without becoming tense. This kind of patience is rare, and it is often cultivated only through long seasons of uncertainty. There is a quiet courage required to believe that God can change everything suddenly, while nothing appears to be changing at all. This courage does not shout, it whispers. It does not demand attention, it sustains you privately. It is the courage to keep trusting when there is no applause, no visible progress, no reassurance beyond the inner conviction that God has not forgotten, and God does not forget. Forgetfulness is a human weakness, not a divine one. He does not misplace your prayers or overlook your tears. Each one is held with care, each one part of a larger story that is still unfolding. When the sudden moment comes, it will not erase the waiting. It will redeem it, showing you that nothing was ignored, nothing was wasted. You may also find that stopping worry allows you to live more fully in the present, rather than postponing life until circumstances improve. You begin to engage with today, not as a placeholder for a better tomorrow, but as a meaningful space where God is already at work. This does not diminish your hope for change, it strengthens it, because it roots your faith in reality rather than fantasy. God's sudden actions often reveal how limited our predictions were. We expected change to come from one direction, and it arrives from another. We anticipated a gradual improvement, and instead experience a decisive shift. These moments remind us that God is not bound by our assumptions. He is free to act creatively, generously, and unexpectedly. As the story continues, you may become increasingly aware that the greatest transformation has been internal. The circumstances matter, yes, but the reshaping of your trust, your resilience, your understanding of God's character matters even more. These inner changes equip you to steward whatever God brings next, whether it arrives suddenly or unfolds slowly. There is a temptation, even after learning all this, to return to worry when new challenges arise. But each time you remember how God has carried you through uncertainty before, worry loses a bit of its credibility. It begins to sound less like a warning and more like a familiar but unreliable voice. Trust, on the other hand, grows steadier, more grounded, more confident in God's faithfulness. You may not yet see the outcome you are hoping for, but you are not standing still. Growth is happening, alignment is happening, preparation is happening. Even now, events beyond your awareness are moving toward a point of convergence that will make sense of what currently feels fragmented. And so you remain attentive, not scanning the horizon in panic, but watching with quiet expectation. You continue to live, to love, to serve, to hope. You allow yourself to rest without surrendering your dreams, to trust without abandoning wisdom, to wait without losing heart. This balance is not achieved all at once. It is learned gradually through repeated choices to release worry and return to trust. The sudden moment you long for does not require you to be perfect or fearless when it arrives. It only requires you to be open. God does not wait for flawless faith, He works with willing hearts. Even fragile trust offered honestly is enough for Him to act upon. As the days continue and the story moves forward in ways you cannot yet see, there remains this steady truth beneath everything else. God is faithful, not only at the moment of breakthrough, but in every moment leading up to it. His presence does not fluctuate with your emotions. His purpose does not waver with your doubts. And His ability to act suddenly is never diminished by the length of the wait. So you continue on, carrying this understanding with you, allowing it to reshape how you interpret silence, how you endure delay, how you respond to uncertainty. You learn to recognize that even now, even before the visible change appears, the conditions for that change are being prepared, the timing is being refined, the story is being aligned. And though you do not yet see the full picture, you remain here, steady and receptive, aware that what feels unfinished is still in progress, what feels uncertain is still guided, and what feels delayed is still moving toward a moment of clarity that will arrive not because you worried enough, but because you trusted enough to let God be God. And as you continue to walk forward in this trust, the narrative keeps unfolding, quietly, faithfully, leading you onward toward what is yet to be revealed. As the unseen work continues, and the sudden you have been waiting for draws ever closer, still forming, still aligning, still approaching, as the story goes on and on. And so, as this moment finds you still standing between promise and fulfillment, let it leave you not with urgency, but with assurance. Let it settle in your heart that God has never been absent from your waiting, never confused by your questions, never threatened by the silence you have endured. What feels delayed has been deliberately shaped. What feels quiet has been intentionally guarded. You are not behind, forgotten, or overlooked. You are positioned. The worry that once felt necessary is no longer required, because the outcome was never dependent on your anxiety, only on His faithfulness. Trust does not mean you have all the answers. It means you know who holds them. And when God moves, He will not do so timidly or halfway, but with a clarity that leaves no doubt that He alone has acted. Until that moment arrives, you rest, you walk, you believe, knowing that suddenly is not a matter of chance but of timing, and the same God who carried you through the waiting will reveal, at exactly the right moment, that every step, every tear, and every unanswered prayer was leading you here, into a future shaped not by fear, but by faith, not by worry, but by trust, and not by human effort alone, but by the quiet, sovereign, and unfailing hand of God.